All right, everyone, welcome to our Staffing Strategies for Space Rentals and Event webinar with our guest presenter, Angie Stellitano from the Miles Nadell Jewish Community Center in Toronto. We do have a number of participants registered for this webinar, so we can expect a few more people to peter in as we get started. I have a few reminders for everyone before we dive into the presentation, and there are just a few housekeeping items to cover. The first one, we will be recording this session, so you will have that recording available to you after the presentation. We will email that to you so you can watch it at any time and pass it on to anyone else who would like to see it. Two, we will be emailing also a quick survey following the webinar. We ask that you complete this survey so we can continue to improve our learning series for arts facilities, both in Ontario and across Canada. Three, you can hear us, but we can't hear you. Your microphones have been disabled for this webinar, but you can use your speakers or your headphones to listen in, and you can adjust the sound by clicking on the speaker icon at the top of the meeting. And lastly, for questions, we will have roughly 15 minutes at the end of the presentation for you to ask any questions to ArtsBuild Ontario, to Work and Culture, and most importantly to Angie, who is doing the presentation. You're welcome to type these in the chat box, and I will let you know when the time has come for those questions to be asked. So first of all, ArtsBuild Ontario. My name is Alex Glass, and I'm the Program Manager at ArtsBuild. In case you have not heard of us, we are a nonprofit art service organization that provides programs and learning opportunities that help make Ontario's arts facilities more sustainable. One of our programs is the Learning Series, which is a series of webinars, workshops, and resources that support our core programs, which are Space Finder in Canada, the Arts Facilities Mentoring Network, Asset Planner for the Arts, and of course our energy conservation. Now I'd like to hand things over to Mona at Work and Culture just to chat about our partnership with the Learning Series and their work.
Thanks so much, Alex. Thanks, everyone. Hi. So at Work and Culture, you might be familiar with us because of our job board. Our mission is to support the people who work in the cultural sector through lifelong career development and entrepreneurial and business skills training. However, on our website, you can find many resources that we provide, and as well as our upcoming programs on our program page. We look forward to working with you, and thanks, Alex.
Thanks, Mona. We are very thrilled to partner with Work and Culture on the Learning Series. It is one of our great free resources for our arts organizations to access, and we're also partners with them on our Arts Facilities Mentoring Network. So thank you, Mona. I'd like to now introduce our presenter today, who is Angie Stellitano, and she's been a member of the Miles Nadell Jewish Community Center and Al Green Theater team since the theater's opening in the fall of 2003. She's held many positions in her 14 years at the Miles Nadell Jewish Community Center, including the front of house being a front of house usher, a supervisor, a theater administrator, a theater manager, and for the past 3 years, she's served as the director of booking operations for the entire community center. Earlier in her career, Angie spent a few years working as a freelance stage manager for a number of Toronto-based theaters and producers, including Mervish Productions, the Marquee Entertainment, Toronto Operetta Theatre, and Anadam Dance Theatre. Angie's ultimate commitment is to have others realize their passion and fulfill on their potential. As such, she has spent the past 4 years actively volunteering as a coach and mentor and has led a talent management program at the Miles Nadell Community Center for the past year. So now I would like to turn things over to Angie for her presentation for us.
Awesome, thanks, Alex. I really want to thank both ArtsBuild Ontario and Work and Culture for inviting me to speak with you guys today, and really thanks all of you for taking your time out to learn a little bit more about staffing strategies. So I'll get us started. I'll just let you guys know, anybody who doesn't know about the Miles Nadell Jewish Community Center and the Al Green Theatre, I'll give you a little bit of a background about what we do. So we are located downtown Toronto, right at the corner of Bloor and Spadina. So apologies in advance if you hear fire trucks going by in the background. Our mission here is to strive to be an inclusive and welcoming hub for healthy and joyful community anchored in Jewish values, where all downtown Toronto can feel that they belong. So the MNJCC really has a wide variety of stuff that we do here. So we have a full fitness facility, including a saltwater pool, a gymnasium, running track, fitness studios, cardio and strength training areas. We're home to both the Downtown Jewish Day School and Downtown Jewish Community School. So as such, 2 of our floors are actually classrooms. We've got conference and meeting rooms. There's a pottery studio. Housed within the community center is the Al Green Theater, which is a 285-seat multi-use venue. We host a number of different things, including live theater, dance, film, lectures, banquet-style events. We actually have flexible seating, which can be removable, so we can kind of open that up and do more of a social setting here. We do the community center on a whole has a really wide variety of our own programming, which keeps us quite busy, and we do rent some of our spaces out around all of that programming. The theater itself primarily deals with outside renters. We do some of our own programming in there, but mostly we're renting to the outside. So we'll now get into event staff. So what we're all talking about today. So event staff really can help prepare your venues and facilitate live events such as theatrical or dance performances, conferences, concerts, trade shows, you name it, that staff can help. There's a number of different event staff and positions that you might be dealing with, from your setup staff to front of house staff, box office, technical support staff, concession and merchandise staff, all of the above. So what we're going to actually cover today is we're going to be establishing what services and staffing to offer your clients, assessing what staffing is required for events in your venue. We're going to go over some tips on how to hire and train staff, and then tips on how to schedule staff for events. If there's anything as we go along, I know we're going to have time for questions at the end. If you have anything burning to ask or you need clarification on something as we go, feel free to type it into the chat. I'll do the best I can to answer those as we go. If not, I think Alex is going to kind of keep an eye, and we'll try to get to those at the end if we don't get a chance. Okay, so basically you want to start with what services are you actually offering as a venue. So you might be offering as is. So basically the client gets an empty venue with limited resources, no bells and whistles. So if you are an organization that has limited space to rent out and you're simply looking to gain a little extra revenue, you may want to consider this kind of approach, which would probably require little staffing at all. And then you can go to the other end of the spectrum, which would be full service. So that would be arranging details in advance with your client regarding their timeline, inventory requirements, room layouts. Is the venue set up to client specifications? You know, you'd be looking at a full complement of staff to support the event. So if your primary business is rentals, you may want to consider full service. Or something that falls somewhere in between that spectrum. So you may offer to choose to offer your clients either or. So we do that often in the community center. If somebody's coming in to just book a meeting room, for instance, there's not a lot of bells and whistles. They come into a room that has some tables and chairs, and off they go. If somebody's renting the theater for a production, they get a full complement of staff, technicians, front of house staff, all of that kind of stuff. So the pitfall would be trying to offer all things to all people. You want to find what your niche is. What are you comfortable with? And go from there. So you want to also be clear with your clients about what specific services they can and cannot expect. That is really key in providing great customer service, and will make a difference for the staff that you actually have working for you and working the events. So one thing of note, full service doesn't mean that you need to provide absolutely everything. That you may have some clients who think so, which is why it would be really great to be clear with them. So really, once you've established whether you're offering as is or full service, you can really start to look at what staffing services you're capable of providing them. So staffing being offered. So here's some examples of staffing services that you could be offering to your clients. Technicians, front of house staff, box office staff, concessions, merchandise staff, setup staff, servers, wait staff, event managers, and captains. So the staffing services you offer clients should be based on what you do. So if you don't provide catering services, you may not want to offer services of wait staff and service staff. Similarly, if you know absolutely nothing about box office, you probably don't want to provide that service. You don't want to make things more difficult for yourself. You want to be looking at what is going to enhance the rentals that you're doing and the services that you're able to provide. Really, from a risk management perspective, you want to do what you do well. So really could be compromising revenue potential if you're not doing that, and just it could be a reputational risk. So I can give you an example of something that we no longer do in the theater because of that. So once upon a time ago, we used to offer, because we are capable of doing social events and pulling the seats out, we used to do bar and bat mitzvah parties as a Jewish community center. It was something that we thought was a community need for sure. Our clients were super excited about this, partially because they had an opportunity to hold this life milestone in a Jewish community center. Our location is right downtown on 2 subway lines, so why not? And in comparison to hotel conference centers or banquet halls, our prices were amazing. So early in the process, you meet with clients. They were super agreeable about all of the constraints that we had being in a community center. We had shared resources, so we had limitations on how many tables and chairs we could provide. Our linens aren't always the nicest because they get turned around and used so often, and that kind of thing. People were super agreeable. In the end, as you get closer and stresses go up, people started to get disappointed. Their expectations were super high. We tried to reiterate what we could and couldn't do, the limitations of the staff that were there. And in the end, we had a couple of unhappy clients. So really, we kind of had to take a step back and look and say, is this actually worth it? As far as I'm concerned, a client is a client. They're going to share their experiences, more bad than good, as you guys may find as well. So if somebody says, oh, we had a really bad experience at the Al Green Theater, it's because they were here at something that we don't actually do well. So we kind of pulled back and actually just stopped offering that. We do smaller scale stuff up in our conference center because there is a need in the community. But we actually just started to learn, what are we good at? Let's stick to that and not go too far outside of that scope. Yeah, so there may actually be some areas as well when it comes to staffing that you need to offer for clients that you're not super familiar with, but you actually kind of need to offer. It's the high demand. It's going to be a make or break for some of your rentals. So my recommendation there is really find people who have experience in that area, either for guidance and support, somebody that you can go and ask questions to, somebody who can coach you through that setup, or you may be able to actually contract somebody on the side to get that set up for you. So it may be box office, for instance. You may know nothing about box office. You may have somebody come in that is experienced that way that you can hire even for a little short-term contract to get a structure set up for you. Something simple, even just training some staff on how to run a simple box office for your clients, just cash sales, that kind of thing. If you're feeling that that's something of need, you can absolutely go that route. At this point, some of you may be saying, this is all really great. I can't afford to hire all of the staff. So really what you want to be looking at is, what are the needs across the board? Which of those costs do you really need to roll into your rentals? So for instance, you have a venue, you need to keep it clean. So you're probably not going to be wanting to charge for that specific service. The expectation of clients is that they're coming with a clean venue. So you're probably going to want to roll that in, but there's other staffing that you can definitely just look to charge back based on the needs of the client. So we do this quite a lot here at the JCC and the Al Green Theater. Any event specific staff, we charge out hourly to the client based on their specific needs because they vary really, really greatly. So once you've established what staffing services you're going to actually offer to your clients, you're going to want to look at what staffing you're going to require for your events and the events that are coming into your space. So there are some questions that you may want to look to start asking yourself. What staff is already working as part of your everyday operations? So at the JCC, we are a very vibrant community center, busy all the time. We have regular operating hours, and we have a full complement of information desk staff that are working during any hours, that kind of thing. So we always know that there's a point person and somebody to greet and direct people during that time. So you want to look for yourself. What does that actually look like for you? Who do you have in your space? Who is already there? You may also want to ask yourself, are you at high risk? Is your facility one that would be considered a high risk for security? So for instance, a Jewish community center, we would definitely be considered more high risk than a YMCA, for instance. So we actually do have security, that one security guard at all times when the venue is open. Do you need staff to lead your emergency evacuation plans? You may have a simple plan. You may have a more complicated venue to evacuate from. So do you need staff that actually would need to lead that? And you may want to also ask, what of these positions that you need, can a volunteer do the job, or is it going to be something that is required a trained staff person to do? So every venue does have its own unique needs. So you want to consider your priorities as a venue. So in the Al Green Theater, we have a real commitment to consistent customer service, professionalism, and safety. So as a result of that, we've kind of looked and said, okay, what is it that we actually need for the events in the theater then? We require that all of our clients have a technician be present at all times whenever the client's in the venue. So that's going to be for safety purposes, personal safety, liability. We also have some really expensive equipment in there. I like to look at it from the perspective of, I wouldn't invite a stranger into my home to be there without me. So we don't actually have our clients come in and be in the space without somebody there as the host and who can actually monitor what's going on. Similarly, when we have any public performances, we do require that we have a complement of our own front of house staff. For us, that our standard is 1 front of house supervisor and 3 ushers. This is in keeping with the fire evacuation and emergency evacuation plans that we have in place. That staff is trained to lead that. All of our staff are also first aid and CPR certified. So if there's any medical emergencies, we have somebody directly on site who can actually be that first responder. They're also there to uphold policy and any additional support for the client. Because we have such a focus on customer service and offering the extras, it's really great to have that personal touch of somebody who's in addition working on your team as the client for your events. Again, I had mentioned earlier that we have security is on site during our regular operating hours. On occasions, we also have some events that we would consider higher risk. So that might be something that's politically charged or a high-profile guest, and we may actually determine that an additional security specific for the theater itself is needed, so we'll do that. Within the community center as a whole, we have a real commitment to customer service as well, but also ensuring that everyone in the facility has a pleasurable experience. We are, I think it's like something like 12 different businesses within a business. So we have varying needs that we're trying to meet. So any of our bookings that are outside of regular facility hours require an event captain. any of our large events that have catering staff coming in, for instance, deliveries, any of that kind of stuff, we have an event captain as well, just so that person can be the point person. Certainly our information desk staff is really busy answering the phones, registering people for programs, that kind of thing, and they don't have the capacity to be pulled away for the specifics of a larger event. So you want to really look to set some standard staffing policies for your own organization. It helps provide better customer service, and it will ultimately save time for you and your staff in the long run. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. Every time you get an inquiry for an event, you don't have to consider, should I or shouldn't I? Do we need that person? Don't we? If you have some standards for yourself, you can actually just communicate that as you go, and you don't have to think twice about it. So once you've sort of established all of this and what you're requiring for your actual venue, you want to look at hiring staff. So the first thing you need to do is create job descriptions. So this slide outlines some things to consider including in a job description when you're putting it together. So what is the purpose of this job? Why is this person even here? Their primary and secondary duties. Any bona fide occupational requirements are really important to include as well. Qualifications, working conditions, physical requirements, competencies, all of that stuff. This really allows you to have a clear idea of what you want your staff to do, and it lets your staff know what they're ultimately accountable for and what they can be expected to do. It can be a really great tool as well to pull from, so you can communicate with your clients regarding what they can actually expect from your staff. Don't reinvent the wheel. If you're unsure about what a specific job position entails, or you're kind of stuck on what to include, reach out to an organization that's similar to yours. Ask for advice, see if they have some samples to send you. You can also do a Google search, checking out job boards of similar positions. I'm a big fan of Steal with Pride. There's lots of great stuff out there. It can actually spark and have you consider things that you wouldn't consider if you start to look outside of your organization for that. I'm also happy to share with you guys. We can send it out. I can have Alex send it out with the other stuff. I can send a sample of what our job description is for our event captains for events here, or if there's a need for any front of house staff, that kind of thing. I'm happy to pass those things along to you guys as well. So yeah, once you have your job descriptions all set up, you're going to want to be posting your jobs. So there's a number of ways that you can post. You'll know what's best for you. Your company website, if you have a career section, is a great place to put that, which you can link back to from social media. Work and Culture Job Board is an amazing resource. It's our go-to absolutely here when we're hiring for stuff. Anybody in the Toronto area who's a member of Toronto Alliance for the Performing Arts, the TAPA industry listing is a really great resource as well. Indeed, Charity Village. I know there's people from all over Canada actually possibly on the webinar, so you're going to want to look for your own region to see what are those resources for you. So also, in terms of finding really great candidates, you ask for recommendations from your existing staff or the staff leaving the position. All of our staff really work as part of a bigger team, and they want to be working with people that they want to be working with. So they want to rely on their colleagues, so they're going to probably provide a really great recommendation. They know what's needed of the job, and probably have some great colleagues that they've worked with at other venues as well. So that's a really great resource to use. Sorry, I'm trying to read my notes and it's not making any sense. Oh, I was going to say, actually asking for those recommendations also helps a little bit with your staff retention. It gives your staff a feeling of ownership and leadership, that they're actually contributing to the organization. It can be really difficult when you're dealing with occasional staff sometimes to keep that, because you can't always offer them regular work. So the more you can actually engage them in different ways, the better. So that's a really great way to do that. Okay, now hiring staff. So you want to consider how many people you actually need to hire. So if you're hiring for an occasional position, which many of these event positions are, you'll want like a pool of people to draw on. Not everybody is always going to be available when you need them. So having a pool of people would be amazing. So you want to kind of consider how many people would you need based on how busy you are, how many shifts you have to offer. You might want to consider hiring multiple people at a time. This will save you time when it comes to reviewing resumes, interviewing, and training. Being able to do a group training is a really great way to build a team, to make those connections, and have people feel like they're really part of the organization. They get to know each other, they can ask questions, that kind of thing. It really helps with loyalty and employment for sure. You may also want to consider cross-training, so have people learn multiple jobs. We have a number of our front of house and event staff that are actually trained as front of house supervisors, as ushers, as event captains. It's amazing because if you're in a pinch, you can pull on those people. We've had people shift gears mid-event. We actually just had the other week, we had somebody ended up last minute being sick, or there was a scheduling mix-up, and we had our box office staff stay on as an usher. They were trained, seamlessly moved over, not a problem. It also means that you can give that staff more work because they're trained in more areas. So one of the first things you want to do once you've posted your job and you're looking to hire is to narrow down your candidates based on their qualifications. So you're going to be reviewing resumes. The way I prefer to do this is kind of creating 3 piles: yes, no, and maybe. And then you can create a short list from your yes pile. From there, if you're having a hard time narrowing that down, you might want to consider doing short phone interviews. It can be a really great way to quickly narrow things down. You can also make sure that your candidates know things like the rate of pay, because sometimes that's a make or break for people, and there's not much point in bringing them in for interviews if it's outside of their range, provided that assuming you haven't provided that in your job posting specifically. So then you're going to move on to conducting in-person interviews. My preferred method is to use the same set of questions for everyone. It's a really great way to be able to compare and contrast candidates on an even playing field. Also, when I have the opportunity, I try to have somebody else in the interview with me. Sometimes that's another one of my team. Has them really take ownership over that hiring process, but also gives an opportunity, if I'm the person doing the interviewing, I really like to get to know the person that I'm interviewing. I'd rather it be more of a conversation. I have questions to ask, but I want to really be able to engage and be out with them. So having somebody else take notes for me is a great way for me to not get interrupted and clunkily be scribbling things down and making the other person nervous. It's also great when you're coming out of it, if you're debating between 2 people or you weren't sure how something landed, to have somebody to kind of throw those ideas and those opinions off of. Conducting second interviews may be necessary, may not be necessary. Depends on if you've got any questions about a candidate. If you're kind of on the fence about them, bring them in for a second interview. You may also just need to narrow down your list a little bit more. Second interviews are great to do that. You really want to just take a look for yourself of like how much time you want to invest based on the kinds of positions you're hiring for as well. Although I do find that it can feel very time consuming to go through the hiring process and really go through all of those steps. In the long run though, that time will absolutely pay off. If you end up with a team of people who are great to work with, who are dedicated, all of that stuff, you're going to keep your staff longer, keep them more engaged, and you're going to be hiring less. So you have to go through the process less and less, which is great. Definitely check your references. You can get some really great surprises from that, I've found in the past. And really for me, I kind of look from a perspective of hiring for soft skills versus hard skills. So basic qualifications, does this person have experience in this area, all of that stuff, that's going to come across on the resume. It will be there. You're going to want to ask some questions for sure in the interview process. But the assumption, if they're getting to that stage, is that they do have those hard skills or enough of them to be doing the job. It's very easy to train the hard skills. It's not as easy, as I'm sure some of you probably can attest to train on communication skills or how to handle conflict or how to be a team player. So I'm a big fan of looking to train for those skills. The rest of it is easily trainable. And don't settle. If you aren't thrilled with the choices that you're getting when you're posting, 100% extend your deadline. Hiring the wrong people is going to cost you in the long run. Ultimately, they're there to serve you in your events, your clients in their events. And if your client ends up having a terrible experience because of the staff that you've hired, there's a huge potential to lose that clientele. It's a reputational risk. It's money in the long run. So really take the time and make sure you're hiring the right people for your organization. Awesome. So once you've done all that and you've hired your folks, you need to actually train them. So there's a couple different categories that I like to look at when it comes to training staff. There's venue-specific training. That might look like your emergency procedures, where the power outlets are. Anybody who runs special events, trade shows, that kind of thing, always good to know where those are, always good to know where the breakers are, how to adjust the temperature in the room, that kind of thing. Something across the board for the venue. Job-specific training might look like operating equipment for technicians. That might be a new technician coming in who's not familiar with your lighting or sound console. It may be training your front of house staff on how to use your hearing assist devices. It could be box office software, and it could be writing or filing reports. Big fan of that when it comes to any events. I am often, or rarely here actually during events, rely really heavily on knowing how processes are working, how clients are working, how our staff is working, based on reports coming back from the staff who's on site. So I find that a really helpful tool. It's a really great way to provide awesome customer service as well for any repeat clients. We take that information and go back when somebody comes back the following year. Great, are you doing the same thing? Here's something that didn't go the greatest last year. Can we look to help you correct that? Maybe make a smoother process. Clients love it. They're surprised actually that you take the time and the care for that. And it's really not a lot of extra work other than making sure you're filing that in a place where you can find it. So. And then we've got government mandated training as well. So things like your AODA training or occupational health and safety training, that kind of thing. You want to make sure that that gets rolled in, that your staff have whatever training they need that way. Another part that we like to bring into some of our training with our event staff is shadow shifts. So it's basically on-the-job training. And it's great for employees who don't have a supervisor on site with them. So if they are the one who's in charge for the events and there's nobody else to turn to there, have them come in after they've done their basic training, they've sat down and they've read any training documentation that you have and gone through an orientation. Have them work an event, have them shadow an experienced staff member. For our front of house supervisors, often what we do is have any new hires do 2 shadow shifts. The first one, there's an experienced front of house supervisor who runs the event. They follow them around, they ask questions. The experienced supervisor lets them know what they're doing in the moment so they can kind of train them as they go. And then they come in for another shift that they're the lead on. They are actually the supervisor, and they have an experienced person shadow them, so if they need to ask questions, they can ask, but they're running the show. And then there could be some coaching that gets put in from the experienced staff. It's a really great way to have your more experienced staff take on more of a leadership role as well. It really just gives that connection and has them take that ownership and really want to kind of stick around, right? Because there's opportunities for expansion for them in their position. So that's some of the tools that we sort of use for training. Now the fun stuff, scheduling staff. So this can be a bit of a beast, as I'm sure some of you have found in the past. So the way that we approach it is we first compile a list of the events that we have, and we do this on a monthly basis. So we take a list, we see what events we have coming up. That for us gets pulled straight out of our booking software. It really depends on how you guys are managing that part of the world. And then we create the staffing schedule. So basically, what's the event, what jobs are needed, what's the start and end times, all of that stuff. Plotting that out. It then gets sent out to eligible staff to sign up for shifts. So we don't have a mandatory, you need to work this many shifts. We keep on enough staff to allow us to fill those fairly easily. That it's a fine line to balance. You want to offer as much work as your people want, but you don't want to get stuck having to chase people down to be working shifts. You don't want holes in your schedule for sure. So that gets sent out. We then collect availability, see what stuff people are available for, and then start to fill in that schedule. We then lock that schedule and post it out there. So
Angie,
I'm sure that, yeah.
Interrupt you just for a quick second. We got a question in from Lisa, and I actually wrote this down for myself too to ask you later. But Lisa is wondering if you have a specific scheduling program you use for scheduling staff.
Yeah, so we're actually in the process of sort of shifting over how we're doing it, and it's a little bit of a trial and error. We have recently changed our payroll system. So we're now using Dayforce to actually process our payroll. And so our finance department has put that in place. So we thought, well, if we're having to put all these shifts in here to pay people, we might as well try to use this to actually do the scheduling. So we're using Dayforce. There's a scheduling component of it that we do use. We have a sort of a fake person. It's like unfilled shifts. So you can put in the job type and the hours that you need. You can get a spreadsheet, and we send that out. And then as people reply back with that, ultimately they're going to be able to do that on an app. We're not quite there yet. But we then just drag and drop and assign those shifts to those people as we go, and then some of that work is already done for us. Sorry, I'm trying to read all these comments as I'm talking.
Thanks. That was a great answer, Angie. It's always interesting to hear who uses what based off of their unique circumstances. And it looks like Phil is just recommending Sub It Up. Phil is from Calgary, and so that's what they use, and says that it's integratable with other payroll systems as well. And so, always good to learn what others are using for their run.
Yeah, no problem. And it depends on how complex your scheduling is. I'll be honest, we went from one extreme to the other. Using Dayforce sounds actually pretty fancy and high tech, and ultimately will be once we have all the components moving together. Before that, honestly, we pulled a basic good old template calendar, went through, we pull a report from our booking system that will pull all the staffing requirements out. We kind of looked, plopped that in, sent it out to staff. They'd stick their name beside stuff, and then we rearrange things as we went. So you can go super low tech to super high tech. No question about that. So as we're talking about, so there's most of your staff are going to have multiple jobs. They're not only going to work for you. Great if they can. I mean, if you have enough work for them that you can hire somebody regularly so you can actually guarantee that they're available for you, that's a bonus. There's some different things that you can kind of look at. If you're a pretty grassroots organization that doesn't have a lot of staff at the venue, you might want to consider, you may want some support with some of the administrative work, coordinating with clients, that kind of thing. And you may only have, you may need somebody for, 10 hours a week to do that. So you may hire them to do that, but you may hire them to do that and with the expectation that there's also another, 10 hours a week of flexible work that they could actually be working those events. So you want to be creative about how you're using that staff. The more that you can cross-train, we find, the better it is for you. You have staff who has a better understanding of your organization, your venue, your events, and can really just help push those things along. They benefit from having more work. Early in my career, I definitely juggled multiple jobs. If I could do multiple jobs in the same place, it was way better for me. Less to kind of keep track of, for sure. So as such, because you're in a way you're competing with other venues or other jobs that those people have. So you want to make sure you're getting your schedules out early enough. We aim here to have our schedules out 2 weeks before the beginning of the following month, and have a whole month schedule set up. That is amazing. I can tell you, when I first started juggling a bunch of different things, I also had a part-time job at the beer store. Our schedules came out a week ahead of time. For a week. Sometimes it was Friday and I had no idea if I was working Monday. It made it difficult to arrange my life, and oftentimes had to decline shifts because everything else kind of filled in. So you don't want to be competing with that. If you can get ahead of the game that way, all the better. Posting too early, we found, is problematic. A lot of our staff have other artistic endeavors that they're working on, and they don't always know what that looks like. They don't know if it's an aspiring actor. They don't always know what their rehearsal schedule is, that kind of thing, quite that far out, so they're reluctant to take shifts. So just finding that happy balance for you and for your staff. One of the things I will say is a bonus is you may want to consider a shift swapping policy. We lock our schedule. Our expectation is, once that's locked, the staff that are scheduled for those events, it's their accountability and their responsibility to show up, regardless of the situation. It's their responsibility to find themselves a suitable replacement. So we have an entire written out policy about how that they go about doing that, making sure the right people are kept in the loop. So we're not surprised that there's a different person showing up for a shift that we don't know about. So those kinds of things are great. Happy to also share that with everybody. We have a sample of what we use here that I'm happy to pass along if it's useful to anybody. We talked about that already. So that's basically scheduling of staff. So now, does anybody have questions or need clarification on anything?
Thank you so much, Angie. That was awesome. So many good points. I love your point about locking the schedule and making it like a priority for your staff to make Miles Nadell and Al Green like their priority job over maybe others. Now, I just want to invite everybody, if you do have questions, we do have a few minutes left. If you want to type them in the chat box, we will get to them in chronological order, and we'll get to as many as we can to just before 1. And it looks like lots of people have questions for Angie. So Angie, I'm just going to read you out a few that came in while you were finishing up your presentation. Alan Sansom asks, do you provide a written estimate to your clients? And if so, when is it sent? And how do you address, oh goodness.
Yeah, we absolutely do. So we actually provide staffing estimates before contracts are even sent out. So our overall process is, we'll have somebody call in or write in and looking for availability. Is the space available? We send them a little questionnaire with some basic information to make sure we can accommodate it. Because we have our standards of what staff is needed for what kinds of events, we plug all of that stuff in to our booking system, which will provide and then we throw out a full cost estimate to the clients. Those variable costs of staffing is sometimes going to be the make or break for rental clients coming in. So we want to make sure that that's really clear for them up front. We don't like to leave anybody with any surprises. We've gotten really good at getting really close with the estimates. We'll go back and forth with clients. We want to make sure they're comfortable with all those costs before they sign off on any contract. And for sure, there's going to be changes as things go. So we just make sure that within the communication back and forth, we are flagging any changes that they want to make that are going to start to affect their staff costs. We flag for them what that will ultimately look like for them. Anything that is a drastic change once they've signed their contract, we just send an updated cost estimate with changes in staff and have them sign off on that as an addendum to the contract. Ultimately, what we do at the end of the day is the clients are responsible for the actual hours worked. So I actually do a final settlement post-event. I will take a look at the exact hours that staff worked. If for some reason events end early and they don't work as many hours as we estimated, we will actually reimburse them whatever they overpaid. If they've come short a bit, we will just invoice them for any remaining amounts. So hopefully that answers that question.
Awesome. Thanks, Angie. Kate Studell is wondering, and if someone else later on asked, what is your current, you answered this a little bit, your staffing software that you use, and Kate's wondering if it's compatible with Ungerbock, or it's spelled Ungerboaek.
Gotcha. I'm actually not familiar with Ungerbock. I'm going to have to check it out. That's why I love when we all get together. It's like you get some really good resources. For us, for staffing, so as booking software, we use EventPro, and it has a component that you can plug staff in for your estimates, and then you can pull a staffing report, and you can divide that down by or filter that down by the specific type of staff, by a date range, by location, any of that stuff. So that's what we do to sort of pull that stuff on a monthly basis to know what shifts we need to actually fill.
Awesome, thanks, Angie. Actually, a lot of our organizations are using EventPro as well, so it's a common one for sure.
Yeah, we're for our purposes.
Yeah. Alan Sansom asking again, do you usually adopt an estimate high to prevent sticker shock later, or estimate lower to get the booking?
We like to do what we refer to as the worst cost scenario. We don't do crazy markups, but we kind of look, like for instance, we know, and certainly Employment Standards Act, there's going to be unpaid meal breaks in there. We don't pass those unpaid meal breaks on to our clients. We usually estimate through them to offer a little bit of bumper space. You get to know how long it takes to do things in your venue. So for instance, we may have clients come in and say, oh, I just need an hour set up for that, dance recital. And we're going, not a chance, not for what you want to do. So we go back and forth and we say, this is in our estimation, it takes roughly this long to do. We also make sure that our technicians are scheduled half an hour before and after clients are in the space, gives them a chance to actually get everything unlocked and get ready, and ultimately are there when the client arrives a few minutes early, that they're not banging down the door trying to get in. So we do tend to go, I would say, a little on the high side. We'd never like to have surprises that we're turning around and ending up with a big bill for somebody at the end. The other thing too is it's a liability for us. We have to pay our staff, obviously, And if we're not collecting that money up front, there is a chance that people aren't going to pay their bill at the end of the day. So we like to make sure we're getting that in ahead of time.
It's always the risk, eh? The unpaid bill. Okay, so we got the Pickering Museum. They're asking, would you share your customer needs survey with us? So if you're willing to, Angie, I'd be happy to send that out along with your other materials when we email all the participants after the webinar.
So sorry, what is it? Customer needs survey? Oh, actually, like what they're like in a rental inquiry form. What we're looking for the.
I would think so.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, for sure.
Perfect. Yes. Confirmed. Kate Stadell is asking, how do you manage expectations from clients regarding staffing? Is minimum staffing requirements a challenge?
Yep, depends on the client. Because then this is why we make sure that we have our standards of what the actual requirements are. We do have, occasionally we'll get clients who, we don't need front of house staff. We don't need ushers. Well, we have got people to do that. And our requirement is that we have it. So it's a very polite conversation. We explain what that staff are responsible for, why we have them in place, why it's a requirement for us, and just politely say, completely understand if it doesn't work for you or you feel like you don't need them. It's a requirement of our venue. So if you wish to rent here, you will need them. And if you we can suggest some other opportunity, like other venues that don't require that, if you like. So we find in the end, we have tons of repeat clientele, which speaks volumes actually for our event staff, because they're the ones who really make the difference for those clients on the day of. I had years ago, when I was the administrator of the theater, fought back and forth with a client, first-time client, and she was so insistent she didn't need this. And I was so insistent that she did, and she'd already paid for it. It was the funny thing. Her event came and went. She called me the day after and said, wow, your staff were phenomenal. Can I book next year, and can I book extra staff? So she got converted really quickly. But just be really unapologetic. If you have a standard of what you need, just stick with your gut. You create those policies for a reason. So just stick to them and know where you're willing to be flexible and not. But yeah, we've had clients that say it just doesn't work for them and they don't come. Very few, to be honest.
Thanks, Angie. Cheryl, a question I missed earlier, had a question with her. She's asking, can someone address the issue of contractors versus employees? Do you have any comments or thoughts about that, Angie?
It's a bit of a fine line. We actually have both, funnily enough. Our technicians, we all actually have as contract staff. Although they're contract staff that still go through our payroll system. They don't have taxes taken off. The reason that originally that wasn't the case. Originally they were part-time staff here. They had all the taxes taken off. They got their 4% vacation pay, the whole bit. There was a perception, because the industry standard was more that it was contract. So they felt like they were actually getting paid less of an hourly rate than they were other places because of the taxes taken off what they were bringing home. At the end of the day, they have to pay those taxes regardless. It was a perception thing. So we shifted that around, and they're actually contract. There's fine lines. I mean, to be fair, we actually treat them like we would any other part-time employee. There's a few legal differences that I'm actually even a little sketchy on. We go back and forth with our HR department, our HR director on that. But yeah, so we actually do both. I don't know if that helps answer that question at all.
And finally, I've got time for one more question, Angie, before we wrap up. Diane is asking, what is the ratio between staff to guests approximately for bar service?
We actually don't do bar service. We do occasionally have receptions that people will get special occasion permits for. We don't actually have a specific ratio that way. We've created standards of what's workable for us in terms of the theater for ushering staff, for instance. We hold 285 people. Our standards, front house supervisor and 3 ushers. If we're guaranteed that our audience is going to be less than 100 people, we'll pull that down to 2 ushers because we know we can get away with our fire plans and stuff like that with it. But there's somebody, Talia is saying at the Art and Theater in St. Albert, they have 4 bar concession staff for a full house of 509. I don't know if that helps.
That's a lot of people for staff, but I'm not sure. We also wanted to recommend the Smart Serve resources for that information too, and we can include that in our follow-up materials. Okay, 1 per 100, not 10. Got it. Thanks, Cheryl. Okay, Angie, I think we're out of time for questions. I just wanted to thank everyone for your great questions and for attending today, and thank you to Angie as well for presenting. I did want to make mention of a couple programs that we have for creative spaces in Ontario. The first one is Asset Planner for the Arts, which is a cloud-based online asset management tool available for arts organizations based in Ontario. We have received funding from OTF to make this program available to the sector at a significantly discounted rate. If you are interested or would like to learn more, please contact me by phone or email, and I'd be happy to chat. Secondly, and most of you already know Spacefinder, but we have currently Spacefinder active in 9 Canadian communities, 6 in Ontario, 3 are provincial. It's a free matchmaking tool for renters looking for creative space and spaces looking to promote their rentals. It's free to list and free to search, so if you're not on there already, please sign up. You can go to spacefinderincanada.ca to learn more. And in closing, I just wanted to remind everyone that we will be emailing out the slides and the recording as well as additional support materials to go along with the webinar today. And we will be also sending a link for a survey, and we would love your feedback on the webinar today and for future programs as well that we offer at ArtsBuild Ontario. And one final thank you to Angie again and to Work and Culture for leading the learning series with us. You can check out more upcoming learning series webinars on our website at artsbuildontario.ca. Thank you, everyone, and